Daybreak crew has been bringing you complete coverage from the Ford Presidential Museum since 4:30 this morning. And right now, we're adding a familiar face to our live broadcast. 24-hour News 8 political reporter Rick Alvin joins us from inside alongside the museum's deputy director. Good morning, Rick.
Good morning, Emily, and thank you very much. Jim Kratsas is a staple and has been here at the museum for 27 years. Is that what you told me?
Yes.
And I should point out before we get started with this, you have also participated in helping other presidential museums. I know you did some work with the Carter Museum at some point.
Yeah, I was the first curator at the Jimmy Carter Library, so you can tell I'm not a political appointment.
Well, let's talk a little bit about this new look for this museum, because the last time we did this, 19 years ago, much colder morning, things had been completely revamped, new section was added, and a whole new display. Now we've done it again, but this time it keeps up with technology.
It does. We allow our visitors to go in and dig deeper into the many collections of the Ford Library, also see additional artifacts that may not be out on display. So people can really get a much better feel for President Ford and Mrs. Ford.
You and I were having this conversation before. What people may not realize is that you have thousands of artifacts. You can't display them all, so you can actually see some of those via the interactives. So even though they may be in safe storage, you can still see them.
Correct. No museum, very few museums, I'll say, put more than 5% of the collections out for display. So this gives the public an opportunity to see even more.
What is the story that's being told now that wasn't being told maybe 10 or 15 years ago?
Well, I think the story is that their lives are now complete, and we can tell the whole story of President and Mrs. Ford. And there's been such a revision of both of their lives that people can get a much better appreciation of what they did.
In about 30 seconds or so, if you had to encapsulate what President and Mrs. Ford meant or mean from a historical standpoint, which is your school of reference, what is it?
First of all, it's the healing of the nation. And it wasn't just pardoning Nixon, Mrs. Ford, and so on. It's amazing how many lives that she potentially saved.
Jim Kratsas, Deputy Director of the Ford Museum. As always, a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll go back down to you guys. Remember, this all starts at 10 o'clock this morning. Very family friendly. It's going to be a relatively brief ceremony, and then the museum is free for the rest of the day. And this is a good opportunity to introduce a new generation of folks to President and Mrs. Ford. Emily?